If you recall, Prashanth, as a young boy in this city, in your teen years, what was life like? What were the pursuits of a young boy in that city? Kind of things, and maybe fondest memory of that era, things you did to have fun, unwind, maybe,
Yeah, I was not definitely a sports person in that sense, right? So my pursuits even in school were a bit geekish, right? So I was into gadgets and
oh, that even back then, huh?
back then in school. So I started in the very early days in the 5th or 6th grade. I don't remember right now, but I started toying with electronics, building a small transistor radio,
That would be
building
60s, 70s.
70s. Yes. So building a start, building these electronic gadgets and putting together transistors and capacitors and learning how to solve.
Your engineer dad helping you out?
My engineer dad was helping, so I think, yeah, that definitely was because of my dad's engineering background. And my dad actually himself came from a family where his father was the first electrical engineer from the state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he basically studied electronics in the state partially, but we didn't have a full fledged electronics degree. So the state sent him to UK. In those days, you would go in a ship few months, and so he was sent out to study and his full engineering degree and come back to Bangalore. So it looked like engineering at least was something that was encouraged at home, and my pursuits were all around electronics and the science, being part of the science club, and some of those were a lot of my pursuits. Yeah, in the end.
Anything in the city that you remember which was kind of an important sort of indulgence?
Yeah, indulgence was my granddad. Like I said, I really lived in these two worlds, right? So just prior to when I started going to school, he had actually started something called Happy World here when the British were there.
What is that?
Happy World was a dance floor for the British in the same neighborhood that we are sitting. I mean, yeah, just so somewhere around here,
Yeah.
right? So he had, of course, the nursery business, and he also had this kind of hotel, which also had a dance floor where the British came. You had the Bangalore Club. You had Happy World was just you continue to see Bangalore Club, but Happy World was one such private club, and he had started it, right? So he had all these connections in the city. So there was these restaurants in Bangalore called Jewel Box, and there was these restaurants in Bangalore called Tiffany's, which at a very young age, otherwise being from a very middle class family, that because of my granddad, I would get to go to these places, which, kids were not usually allowed. These were places where usually, I guess in those days, they were where people would go to drink, right? They were the pubs of Bangalore in the early days before it became a pub city.
Yeah.
So Tiffany's is a childhood memory where it was one of the first what you would think as a modern quality Class A restaurant in the city. So that was a big memory. And the first fast food restaurant that opened in the city.
Which one?
It was called, it was called Max.
Max.
Max, MAC.
Okay.
Max. So there was this some entrepreneur. I think he was from Dubai, right? So he just came in and Church Street, right? So Church Street is where we had the first fast food restaurant in Bangalore called Max, and people in the early days would actually line up to get into Max. So even in those days, there was something still modern and experimental in this city, right? You got this fast food thing happening. You had this pub thing happening. So it was.
So, one of the things, Prashant, I've heard from so many people, and especially people down south like Kerala, Hyderabad, Tamil Nadu, they talk about this city being a dream city, a city which felt like a foreign city, right?
Right.
The ethos, the culture, the feels, right, that you got.
And that's because the cantonment was really very, well. I mean, there's a lot of parts of the city that are not well planned, but the cantonment, even for the early days, the MG Road, the Brigade Road, were what I think in the country had what you could call as high street. Those were high streets of India, right? So, like you heard from many people, I mean, coming to Bangalore for them or going to a pub was unthinkable. I mean, where in India would you go to a pub, right? This idea of a pub, right? You have to go to London, right? If you couldn't go to London, then you could come to Bangalore to go to a pub. So
No wonder Kingfisher came out of
the
this city,
Kingfisher
right?
came, yeah. So I think maybe that, actually, you're right. Maybe that's what made this the pub city also, right? So even in those days, looking back, there were people always trying to pioneer something in the city and try something new.
For stories like this, keep following us. From Code to Culture, our podcast. Subscribe to our channel, follow us on social media.